Welcome to Business Club. I'm here with Bruce Linton. So Bruce Linton is the founder and former chairman, CEO, and co-CEO of Canopy Growth Corporation, formerly Tweed Marijuana Incorporated, a cannabis company based in Smith Falls, Ontario, Canada. So Bruce founded Tweed in 2013 and renamed it Canopy Growth Corporation in 2015. Canopy Growth Corporation was the first cannabis company in North America to be listed on a major stock exchange, TSXV in April 2014 and TSX in July 2016, and to be included on a major stock index, the S&P TSX Composite Index in March 2017. Bruce co-founded Canopy Rivers in 2017 and Canopy Health Innovations in 2018. Bruce's founding idea grew to a venture TSX listing, a startup company with an 80 million market cap to the New York Stock Exchange TSX listed company, including more than 30 M&A or merger and acquisitions activities, ranking number one on the TSX 30 with a market cap of over 20 billion by the summer of 2019. So Bruce's experience as a founder, CEO, and board member across a diversity of sectors was a huge influence for the success of Canopy Growth Corporation, earning market support of 16 rounds of financing of over 6 billion in public capital markets and private placements. The company founded capacity growth and opened new markets, including a 5 billion investment by Fortune 500 beverage company Constellation Brand. Bruce is a co-founder and was a chairman, CEO of Canopy Rivers, Inc. and Canopy Health Innovations. So great to have you with us, Bruce, the myth, the legend, Bruce Linton. So wonderful to have you with us. I think of you as like the Canadian Steve Jobs, or because you are a real pioneer in the cannabis industry. So anyway, it's wonderful to have you with us today.
Oh, no, it's, I guess Mr. Jobs and I both got fired, and we'll see what happens next for me. But good to be here.
Yeah, excellent. So Bruce, I wonder if, so a lot of our listeners are in the, small business owners. I wonder if you could just walk us through, I mean, to first like start a company from scratch, and at its height, I think it was worth about $20 billion. I wonder if you could just walk us through and highlights, of course, we mentioned the Constellation Software investing $5 billion in your company. And then you got endorsed by Snoop Dogg and that was a big uptick in your stock at that point. Just walk us through the history of, you started with the idea, you started acquiring other companies, hence the Canopy aspect of Canopy Growth. And then you listed on the stock exchange, and then eventually, sold out your position there. And I just wonder if you could just walk us through like what it takes to, start a successful company. What are the key factors, building your team and, to become such a huge success?
Yeah, so there was a lot of times it was pretty likely that it was going to be a failure, right? So I don't want to give anybody boy, this was a smooth ride. It wasn't. There were 2 or 3 times where we were within a hair of being bankrupt. And so, those things occur in every sector. But I would say as I got older and we try, you do different business as you grow, you become more decided that what you're doing is what you want to do. And you want to focus on the way you want to do it. And you want to bring people in that sort of share not necessarily your method or anything, but your objective, really clearly your objective. And they maybe share your view of culture. And so when I started it, you have to assess your circumstance. What I was doing was starting at that time, you would have called it a pot company. And it wasn't a well-understood concept. And if a concept isn't well understood, usually it's viewed as a bad idea, which is actually when you should start the business. Because by the time it's a good idea, everybody likes it. There's probably too many competitors. But when you have a bad idea, you have to say, how do I enhance my credibility by borrowing credibility of others? So one of the first things I did was I convinced Deloitte that they should have their first ever marijuana customer. And Deloitte, to their credit, local Ottawa office decision process supported by head office, had us as a client. And I'd used them for a decade or two. Previously, for every business, Deloitte was always who I would start with. It had just been a pattern, and they did a good job. And so what happens is then you go to a meeting with a bank, and you can say, well, I'm starting this business, and it's federally licensed, they're going to be, and Deloitte's my auditor, and it's a marijuana business. And the bank is kind of nodding their head yes already before you get to the marijuana business part, because you borrowed someone else's credibility. And so over and over we did that. The only reason I listed it on stock exchange, well, there were two. One was so that people would have a visibility, an acknowledgement of our existence. And the reason that matters is you can't become a patient or a customer of something you've never heard of. And if it's an area that you're not sure about, it's much easier if you show up in an area where the people who read and listen to the financial news tend to have money. So now I'm talking to people with the capacity to pay in a credible platform. And so that was the first reason. And then the second was that to do all those acquisitions, I did only one acquisition just sort of quickly after being public, but really so close on the heels we're almost private, but everything else was done with publicly traded currency. And if you do them properly and you do acquisitions and you do financings, and you don't start off with a crazy goal of, a lot of people I talk to have this idea they want to protect against dilution. I have no clue what that logic is, in that if you give me $1 and I give you $1 worth of my company at that time, if I spend the dollar to make it worth more than I received, I've created value, which to me is the point of the exercise. If you gave me $1 and I only created 50 cents of value, then dilution is a problem. But really, that means dilution is only a problem because I'm incompetent. And so this notion of being terrified of dilution strikes me as a fear of your own plan or a fear of your own capability. And so we diluted the hell out of ourselves, grew super rapidly, and worked out just fine. And so that starts though with a founding principle, which is, how do we make it so people keep making money every time we go do a round? We had 16 rounds of finance, and all 16 were at an increasing value. And so if you want to raise more money, make people money. It's pretty simple, right? If I call you and you'd given me $1 and I turned it into 10 and I say I need another $2, not too hard to convince you. If I call you and I've turned your $1 into 50 cents, I have to twist your arm pretty hard. And shit happens that makes that sometimes not work. But the first thing is, if you start off with a valuation that is too much, start with a little less and move people up with you. And then I would say I really like, I started in tech with Sir Terence Matthews, still work with Terry. And one of the things that he will tell anybody he meets anywhere is about the fact that you can't just think about being, well, I'm really good in the city in which I am, and maybe I'll get better next. No, everything's equidistant, and that everybody who works in the company should have equity. So stock option programs are a core and foundational perspective on how first business I was in was his thing called Newbridge, and I showed up and I got these options. The next thing you know, the options turned out to be worth way more than my salary. And so what I like is every company I'm in, everyone gets options. You don't all get the same amount, and you all get them once. And if you rock it and move the thing forward, and we see you as a future key player, you get more. Otherwise, you don't. And so the culture of Canopy was we like rules because those are barriers behind us once we clear them. We work together because we're all owners. We generally had this view that what we were building was like, you couldn't tell what it was because it looked like a rocket or a huge firework sitting on a pad. And the point of the exercise was this thing was going to take off. And depending how we constructed it and operated it, it was going to either be a rocket ship over the moon or a firework of huge size that exploded quite high altitude. Both are interesting to watch. One is suitable to ride. And so people understood this is the model, and they understood that that thing was not fitted with a rear view mirror, because when you're on a rocket, you don't need to look behind you. And so that whole mentality of these things, and People who might listen to this are the founders, which really makes you not the boss, but the leader. And so if you're the leader, your job is to do exactly that at all times. And that means sometimes, you know, there's a lot of bad shit going on and you got to deal with it, and you got to keep the happy face up front and the sweat in the back. And when it's the good times and everything's getting done inside the shop, the people who did it got to be recognized. So we had one of our 8 cultural principles was catch people doing good. Point out when you got something done. And another one was get shit done, right? This whole notion that somehow it's beneficial to let things slow down. Well, you know anything about pushing something, if you let it slow down, you got to push harder again to make it get moving. And so we wanted decisions in action, and thoughtful decisions and actions were an assumption, but indecision while being thoughtful is worse than decision while being thoughtful. So stuff like that. I think we were lucky that timing happened, but part of the reason I started it is I thought the world was going to change. Did I know it would change in so many ways so quickly? No, but you can read things, right? Like look at right now. What are hot topics? I don't know. Got guys like Bill Gates investing in how do you grow meat without it being an animal. You got social platforms where it's basically, I'll call it the sharing economy, Ruckify. Perfect example of if 10 years ago, 12 years ago, you told somebody that you were going to ride from the airport to your meeting in some guy's car who you didn't know, they'd think you're crazy. It becomes Uber. And that when you stayed in the city, you were going to sleep in somebody's apartment that you didn't know. They'd think that you're either a tramp or a nut. And instead it's Airbnb. And so this whole thing has another wave where those are one and done. You know, you use Uber with some frequency, Airbnb maybe with less. A lot of the, you know, in Ruckify, we have an RV division, but a lot of people, those are like you rent one every few years. The idea that we share everything we have, like, why do you need a step ladder if I have one and you live in the same city as me? I use mine an hour a year. An aluminum ladder does not age in our lifetime. Why is that not being transited around and shared? He said, well, who cares? It's only an aluminum ladder. I can afford it. It's $100. It's not just that. Where do you store it? That's a bit of it. Then how do they make aluminum ladders? They dig big holes, take out the ferrous materials, put them through a process to turn them into a liquid, put it into big sheets, put those rolls and put them on a boat, send them off to say China, form them into a ladder, put them on a huge boat, ship them back to the US, put them in a Home Depot, probably wrapped in plastic and styrofoam, sell it to somebody, and then it goes to their house and gets used once a year for an hour. So the real problem is the process of creating all the shit we buy that we don't actually use with any frequency, not just the capital costs. And when you think about a recession, which COVID is going to give us a really good example of, in a recession, if I've got a ladder, maybe the $100 a year I can earn from it matters a bit more. And maybe the $90 you can save by not buying it, but just renting it matters a bit more. And so I think things like big things, sharing economy things are going to be massive because people learn to share when they don't have what they need.
Yeah, and we had Steve Cody actually as our last guest, so it was great too. And I think that's a fantastic, concept with Ruckify. And I've joined it myself, I rented it. I put my tractor, my lawn tractor and my generator on there as well. And it's really cool that you're getting into boats and RVs. And Steve was mentioning that RVs are one of your big sellers right now. And then also you're going to be listing Ruckify on the NASDAQ in the future too. So it's really exciting what you guys are doing with Ruckify and huge potential.
The table my computer's sitting on and the chair I'm sitting on are Ruckify items. Because I never had a home office. I hate the idea of a home office. It's like house arrest with work. It's my home is where I come to not work. The idea that I actually stay here and work is to me a very unpleasant and unwelcome change in life. And that's just a personal thing. Like I'm sitting here and what I'm doing is I'm looking out at my yard. You know what I'd sooner do when I look out at my yard? Go out my yard. So maybe if I should make my home office in like a windowless corner of my basement would be more suitable. But so I never set up a home office. Why would I have a home office? I hate them. But when I needed one, I actually avoided having one. I worked at a kitchen table with a kitchen chair, and then I moved it to the tabletop of a old Pac-Man bar game with a kitchen chair. I did that for 3 months until I concluded that kitchen chairs were not designed for people to sit in sort of 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, because your legs and your ass get super sore from just sitting in like this hard wooden chair bent over at a Pac-Man game. So finally, I get this. It's a gamer chair. I don't know if you can see it. Like, yeah, promise I'm not gaming, but having access. And like, I have a garden when I look out my window from my unwanted home office, and I can see this garden. I know it's doing well. I Ruckified the rototiller to root it up this summer or this spring, and I've done that the last 2 years. You know why? Little rototillers, I needed it for maybe 15 minutes. Why the heck would I want to own one? And oh, good, well, you can get a big one or a medium-sized one at Home Depot. Well, how do I get it? Well, you load this thing into your car, which has been in the dirt, and you put it in the dirt, and then you put it back in your car, and you got to put it in, and getting it in, they might help you, and getting it out, no one helps you. And getting it back in, no one helps you. Maybe they'll help you when you get there again. With Ruckify, it ended up in my laneway. I used it, cleaned it, and they came and got it. You know what? It cost a little bit less than if I went and got the stupid thing at Home Depot. So tell me, why would I ever buy a rototiller?
Yeah, no, it's a great company you got there. So Bruce, I want to talk to you. Are you still, because what I understand is that you're still involved in cannabis sector in Europe now, and so I was just wondering what your thoughts. Of course, Ruckify is a great passion of yours right now, but I was wondering are you still in the cannabis sector? Are you still looking at doing some work in that sector?
No, I think I've got about 5 or 6 companies I'm invested in and active with. And when I say active, every Monday we have a call to go through things. So in Europe, Europe is probably the best and biggest next market for cannabis. And I say that because Germany has begun about 4 years ago regulating and making a serious market for medical. Places like Denmark, Czech Republic, Poland, Italy, they're all moving, and it's not a EU platform, UK. And what they have is a federal structure that allows it to be legal, and they have great academic platforms to do research, and they have a lot of industrial practices related to pharma in Europe. And so when you put those 3 things together, the next companies which take cannabinoids into super disruption of medical environments and wellness are going to be out of Europe. So we started a venture fund in Europe, myself and 4 other people who are all extraordinarily well-educated doctors and PhDs in chemistry and things like that. We started a fund called OSCARE, OSKARE, and we're just raising the money now for that. We'll have about 150 million euros, and we'll deploy it against early stage opportunities so we can build the next great companies. And then in Canada and US, I have investments in a couple Canadian companies, one called Slang International. It's a brand company where it's all the cannabis. Part of the problem with cannabis is how do you know you're getting the same thing every time? Well, if people run brands and inside those brands, they have quality control processes. When you buy the same brand, whether it's vaporized or any other format, Slang kills that. They're in about almost 3,000 dispensaries around North America with their products. And then DNA is a company which has a long history of genetics. And then in the US, we listed, I'm a founder and chairman and CEO of a thing called, well, it was kind of actually, it lists, its initials are CGC, which are the same initials as Canopy Growth, but this is called Collective Growth Corporation. And what it is what they call a blank check or a SPAC, and it's listed on NASDAQ. So what you have is 150 million bucks and a free trading currency, the stock, and you go out and buy a whole bunch of things concurrently, and then you get shareholder approval, and you end up with a multi-$100 million company listed, and away you go. And that one's intended to disrupt things like HDP pellets for injection molding, how you make cars so that they're lighter and more sturdy using hemp, believe it or not, which is looks like marijuana, but much taller, very fibrous. And then in Michigan, I'm chairman and invested in a company which there's a brand of cannabis called Cookies. They're the operator in Michigan. Engage's business is medical and rec, and they're just absolutely rocketing because December 1st, December 1st of 2019, Michigan made it so you could have rec and medical. And so this company is growing at like sort of every time they open a store, they add in a month a few $1 million in sales. And so they're just ripping. And, that kind of combination keeps me close to cannabis. I'm very busy with Ruckify and with Martello, which are two software companies. And then this other extension, which is, if you say, well, what else has had really stupid rules? Because the reason I got into cannabis was stupid rules were going to change. And if you're there when the rules change, you make a lot of money. Like the number one thing I think that almost all of us as entrepreneurs need to look at is what is happening on the public policy front. Is there some big public policy change happening? So we know for sure out of COVID, one thing that is going to change is the public policy surrounding how geriatric or long-term care facilities work. And if you figure out and have a view on how it's going to change, it's going to be like everyone must not forget air conditioning. They should have air conditioning, but will they be mandating that the air handling systems are different? Well, if that's the case and you know how to make those systems or invent those systems, you're going to make a hell of a lot of money. So when public policy changes, if you're at the front of that wave, it just propels you forward if you have the right answer and the right time and the right compliance. And so public policy around what they call psychedelics, which should really just be called neuromodulating medicines, because it's a psychedelic because it affects your psychedelic or psychotropic state. Well, I think many things, whether it's depression, anxiety, PTSD, a great number of disorders are all perception and psychological state. And so if you can use psychedelics combined possibly with other therapeutic methods to cause people to perceive their circumstance in not such a depressing way or with diminished anxiety, you have a huge business. But the rules have been so stupid around governance of them that only pockets of research have occurred. And so psychedelics, I think public policy will change because all of us are a little more enlightened that people's psychological state is really important. Where, 40 years ago, come on, it's just sort of suck it up buttercup. Now, Bell has their days and things like that. So I think psychedelics are going to have a blazing bright future as they impact these things. And they're really different than pharmaceutical because pharmaceuticals business models, let's invent something you have to take forever so you feel moderately better. And people will accept tons of side effects on something they have to take every day forever if they get moderately better. Where the psychedelic model is, how can we use this in combination with something so that maybe you never need it again in your life? And if you do, maybe it's 10 years from now. So it's not this constant daily dosage thing. It's about an event and an outcome. And so that's going to be very disruptive because pharmaceutical companies like you to need a pill every day or an injection every week or that model of care. And so that combination is interesting. I think, it's been about 1 year since I'm out of Canopy. I'm going to spend the next year or two getting a little deeper and wider into a few things. But what I wanted to do is keep busy, see some stuff that's interesting, help raise money, shape some stuff around. So I think I directly did or assisted in 3 acquisitions and 6 financings for a total of about $200 million in my year off. So, it was a quiet year.
So Bruce, I wanted to find out kind of what is your personal why? Like I've interviewed some other millionaires and they want to be in the abundance game to become a billionaire. I'm just wondering is that one of your goals, or is it more of you want to just change the world? You want to be an innovator? What would you say your personal why is?
Yeah, I don't even own a car. I haven't owned a car since January 25th when mine croaked. And I've been meaning to get to one, but I just haven't gotten around to getting one. And then COVID happened. So I just I have to borrow a car from my kid. No, I don't. My thing is what do people do if they don't work on things? And what do they talk about if they're not trying to create things? And what do they get enjoyment out of if it's not going to take people on tours of what they built to talk about why this is making the world better and interesting, and the people that you have working there on those tours are working in the best job they've ever had. I tried playing golf again this year. It still is not for me. I have no idea. I don't think it's enjoyable. I don't think you're going to work when you want to do these things. To me, I have a ongoing interest in the game of creating things.
You're definitely a true innovator. With Canopy Growth Corporation, it was a game changer because you basically saved Smith Falls. That was and you were really into wanting to hire to give people work, and then of course Constellation Software came in. And I mean, it's a huge investment, but do you think that was kind of like the turning point? Just because now I know they're like firing like 500 employees. They doubled the CEO's salary, and typical like what you see in those corporations. And so it's like the capitalism versus making a difference. And would that be like a fair assumptions of like an observation of a Canopy Growth Corporation?
No, so it was Constellation Beverages, the Corona guys that put the money in. But no, I would say that the salary thing, I just never get. Like, I think if you're running a place, you should have a ton at risk and almost a low income, no income. So I had a nice income, but it was like, I had, I think 3 or 4 people who made more than me in the company, cash, at least. And so that's just how do you want to do a thing? Like, it just makes no sense to have a high salary, in my opinion. If the company could use the money to create more value for everybody, including me, then I would take out of the salary. The layoffs were necessary because the world's changed quite a lot. So I would say the rate at which rec has rolled out is increasing and improving now in Canada, but like the biggest province had no stores for a long time. Now they got lots and it's going great. Europe's gone a little slower. Things like COVID, if you had a market called Europe and you had to ship stuff from Canada to Germany, say for the last 3 or 4 months, how's that going? Not super well. So they did need to do it. How they did it, maybe different than I would have. I'm not a big fan of laying people off during COVID. I probably look at it and say, if we get 75% of our salaries covered and 25 up to 50K, how do we get by? Because it's not life or death. They have lots of cash, but they did need to cut. And I think they do need to cut. And things don't always work out as prepared for. But as far as Smith Falls goes, the intellectual and tangible assets created there, that will be headquartered for a long, long, long time. In fact, I'm off to Smith Falls today to go and look at my, I bought what used to be the original post office and customs office and armory for that town. And it was architected by a guy named Thomas Fuller. And Thomas Fuller, the original, was one of the key design architects for a lot of the buildings of Confederation of Canada. And this building is one of those sorts of buildings, and it was in such disrepair that the acquisition price is only about 1/10 of the bring it back to useful life price. But I think that the town was so good to me, I should do that, and it's finished. This is like this week, that project's finished, and anybody listening should drive to Smith Falls and just drive by and check it out, because it is a piece of architecture that if you like anything made out of some of the stones similar to Queen's Park, a design that when you see it, it is of that exact era. This is a perfect example now. But with that, I must depart.
Yes, all right, Bruce. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing your knowledge. And we're definitely wish you all the best with Ruckify and your other ventures. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Talk to you, man. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Bye.